Hi, this is Henk, and welcome to another edition of the Skull Sessions. And today, my guest is Marcus O'Day. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, awesome. All right, man. So let's talk about what you got going on.
So a couple years ago, I left Colorado and moved to North Dakota. Colorado, once they legalized weed, it was just insane. They were getting like 2 million people a year into the state. And I was like, I can't do this here. So I ended up in northern North Dakota. Now I live in the middle of nowhere with my dogs and I write. I've got a couple new magazines coming out soon. One of them horror themed. And I've also opened a publishing house of my own so I can publish my books and get other books in that I think would work with our publishing process and get those out into the world. Currently, I'm a professional book publicist for several best-selling authors, and that's how I got into this publishing business is through that. So, yeah, so that's the thumbnail sketch. Uh, what else would you like to know?
Uh, do you mostly end up publishing or writing or like? Because so I managed a tattoo shop for years, and
uh,
I would say my partner was lazy, but I basically ended up doing everything or didn't get done. Like one
got
day,
it.
like the electricity shut off, and so I do all this research and talk to all these different people. So I just know that the technical side takes up a lot of your time. And like now I work with somebody else and like he handles everything and I feel like very relaxed, like he can just be an artist. So I'm just wondering, does it take up all your time? Do you have somebody helping you? How's it laid out?
So interestingly, my early career, I've been a creativity coach for about 45 years, and I've
Okay.
worked with people exactly like yourself, helping them to kind of find the time and find the energy and the motivation and the vision to do
Mhm.
what they do. And I've taken that process and turned it around on myself. So I'm ADHD pretty much. So what I call it though, it's not ADHD. I call it 80, 80 HD, which is high definition, and it's ADHD channels of creative process. And so time management, all this stuff. So I spend a lot of time doing everything, but none of it gets done quickly.
Right.
So I call it slow motion multitasking. So today I've been on a call with the local courts for something. I used to be a paralegal, that's why. And I have been building a Bible for a horror universe that I've been working on for about 20 years. And it's just where my focus is directed to any given day. I can wake up in the morning and have no idea what I'm going to do that day. But like yesterday, I spent 12 hours writing in my current novel. So, everything gets attention. Everything gets to move forward. Um, I had to learn to stop setting arbitrary deadlines with myself because it made me crazy. I would miss my own deadlines because they were too strict. And so I said, I have to find something that resonates with me and my process and my approach to art. Um, and that's what I've done. I've spent a few years just really putting together a program for me, and it helps. I've got 4 completed novels now ready to go. I've got 4 nonfiction books ready to go. And so I just like to keep that moving forward. And if I get to work on something every single day, I'm happy. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. So I have two questions for you.
Okay.
One is like this is my approach, like as far as like, especially as far as like writing, because like writing, you have to think of imaginary new stuff all the time.
Right.
So like I'll be writing a scenario, and when I reach like a block point, like a roadblock where I'm like, how exactly is the best way to progress from this point? And usually I kind of lay out my stuff so I know broadly where everything's going. But like, at the heat of the moment, I might be like, well, should you make a right turn, a left turn? Should you focus on this or that? So what I do is I just take a break and I'll go do something that involves like some sort of physical activity. Like I'll go to the gym or I'll go running or something, and like that helps the endorphins rush through your brain. And I'll just be like for instance when I'm biking, I'll be thinking about like what should be the next progression. And
Yep.
usually by the time I'm done, I've come up with something. So I know there are some people that are very much like the Stephen King, like just word dump, where they're like, I have to get a certain amount down. When I've done that, and I've tried it, when I've done that, it's all garbage. I have to rewrite all of it.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm
it
wondering
doesn't
what your
really
process
advance.
is. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no. What you just said is what I would teach anybody in a coaching situation. I would say, look, you're too close to it right now, and
Hmm.
if you just continue and bear down on that, it's not going to give you anything. It's just going to get more compacted. It's like you become constipated creatively, and so you have to stand back and you have to do something. You have to get your brain to participate in something that it doesn't have to think about. Riding, doing the dishes, taking the dog for a walk, because that allows the writing part of your brain to process. And you get past that block by not focusing on it.
I
I
guess it
think
kind of refreshes too, because like you take your mind off that specific thing, so you're focused on
exactly,
something else. So when you come back, you have a different outlook.
exactly. And that's exactly right. And and I do the same thing. Like I know that if I walk away from something that I'm doing because I can't get past this sticking point, sometimes I'll go watch something on YouTube. And I've actually had brand new novels enter my brain while I'm watching YouTube, while I was taking a break from the novel I was working on.
Yeah.
So it's like the whole process feeds itself and it's great. I love it. But
It
what you
does.
said
You
is
come up with
perfect.
a whole bunch of stuff that like may be relevant to what you're working on currently, or maybe the start of something new. But you come with all these great ideas when you're just kind of like randomly exploring everything and not like focused on the next sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes if I get stuck but I can't break away, I'll write a scene later in the story because that will sometimes also loosen up what I need to do earlier in the book. So, writing that piece gives me suddenly opens up a pathway from where I was stuck to where I need to be. And I'm like, oh crap, now I know how to get there. Go
Right.
back and write that piece. I mean, you have to figure it out. Whatever your process is, your way of learning, your way of creating, you have to figure it out. I can't tell you how to do it, um, because I'm not you. I can tell you what I do, and you can try it and say, "Hey, that did work," or "That was shit, that didn't work." Um, but at the end of the day, you really have to figure it out for yourself. And you can read books or watch TV or do whatever. Um, but just know that your process is your very own, and that if you honor that process, it will always serve you.
I've also found that talking with people helps because like even if you're not going to necessarily take their advice, saying it out loud helps you think about how it's expressed. So when you play out in your head, you're like, "Is this way?" And you see it aloud, you're like, "That was fucking stupid. Why did you do that?" You know? But it helps you, and then like maybe they come up with something. Maybe
Mhm.
not. It might not be the exact way you want to progress, but it puts you on a pathway
But
where you can think
right,
about something else. Yeah.
right. Take that first step down that path and don't worry about where it comes out because you can always go back and correct it and make it work. Um, and I agree with that. I'm not much of a people person. I mean, I get along with people and whatnot, but I live in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody out here. And
Right.
so I've taken to talking to AI and I throw things at AI and have a conversation. And for me, that works the same as what you're saying with talking to other people, except AI doesn't bring emotional baggage and doesn't try to write the story for you and doesn't do all this other stuff that gets me distracted and makes me crazy. So I kind of lean on AI that way for some of that.
I think a
And
lot of it is just like you sing yourself out loud.
exactly, that's exactly it. Um, have you ever been in therapy? Not to invade your privacy, Um, but that's what therapy's for. You hear what you're saying out loud, and then it comes back through your ear and it turns into something else. That's
Right.
why therapy works for some people. That's why talking to people works for you. That's why talking to AI works for me. So we figured out our paths. We figured out this is what works for me, so this is what I'm going to do. And I'm excited for you. That takes some people a really long time, and some never find that process.
Yeah, well, to answer your question, yes, I was married, so I have been in therapy. Like, you actually don't know what the other person is thinking until it's presented to a therapist. So I think just saying stuff out loud really helps.
Mhm.
What I was going to say, just moving on from that, is like you were saying about how you're building a horror universe. So
Mhm.
is there kind of like a like everything that happens has kind of a continuity, kind of like in comic books, like it's like they all kind of live in the same world. Like originally when I moved to New York, I was going to be a comic artist and like I interviewed with DC and Marvel and image and stuff. And at the time they're doing very poorly. This is '98, so and they
Right.
only do superheroes, and I didn't want to do superheroes. I want to do my cosmic horror thing. But I remember one thing I like a lot about comics is like they all kind of exist on the same plane of reality. And
Mhm.
like sometimes they interact, sometimes they don't interact, but it's kind of like a solid foundation for the world. So
It,
is that kind of what you're
yeah.
thinking?
Yeah. One thing I want to say is we should probably talk off camera because
Okay.
I've got a series of 22 graphic novels that I want to produce. You and I might be able to work on that together if you think it's in that cosmic horror universe. So
Okay, well, this is the only thing I found. It's like most people that are like really into getting artwork done, especially if it's like a graphic novel, because a graphic novel is a lot of work.
it
'Cause,
is.
like and like if you see in my drawings, like they're very detailed. So like I've done drawings for like books and magazines and stuff, but I usually do what are called splash pages, which is
Right.
like basically it's a whole page. It's a one-off. So I enjoy doing that, but like the individual storyboards where it's like the character walking up a stairway, walking down a
Yeah.
hallway, that I find like I've done some of that and I find that a little bit more boring. But the thing is, you every artist wants to get paid before the work done because there are lots of people that are like, yeah, man, this would be awesome. So we'll put it out, and then if it makes money, you get your pay. And you're like, dude, I gotta pay my fucking rent. That it works. So that comes into consideration.
And
And
I've
I
hired, yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I
No, I,
hired I've hired artists before to do the illustration and the deal that I work out because I'm a writer, so I understand paying the rent, buying groceries and shit. Um, I pay them half up front. And so they at least are covered financially. And if something changes in the duration of the creation,
That
um,
that's the way that I work. Yeah, that I consider that the correct way. Like unless you work for like Marvel or DC, which are like
right.
they automatically pay you like every 2 weeks or whatever. It's like so I've done like a lot of album covers, and at first I was like, oh man, this band is awesome. So I do like a full on oil painting, like 40 hours of work, and at some point I get a hold of them and I'd be like, hey man, can I get some money because like for
Something.
materials,
Yeah.
because I gotta pay rent, I gotta pay the bills, and they're like, talk to the label. So then I'll talk to the label. The label's like, oh well, we gave them a big advance. Part of that advance is for the album cover, so they already have the money. So then I call them. They go, oh, that's what it is for. We already spent that, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. People aren't good with money, especially in the creative industries. It can be very hard.
Right.
Um, I've worked for 9 to 5 companies and stuff like that, so I get the paycheck idea. Um, and that's why whoever I work with, I try to be really fair and we work out something that works for everybody, not
Okay.
just for the person who came up with the idea or is hiring the other person. No, that's not how things work. You need to live. I need to live.
Right. Of
So
course.
let's
Yeah.
work it out so we both
Yeah.
can live while we're doing this.
Yeah.
But so yeah. Um, so yeah, this universe thing is really kind of, it was inspired first by some early um, horror novels that I read of Dan Simmons and um, I can't think of names, but you know, Stephen King, of course, was in that realm. Um, and it just made sense to me. So my universe is actually a horror universe, but the horror exists in places that are unexpected. So you've got people living on the surface of the planet and they're doing their thing and going through their days and they're solving crimes and they find a dead animal and blah blah blah. But then the
So it's kind
horror,
of like a buried level of like evilness going
exactly,
on. Yeah.
exactly. And then that horror starts seeping up into the world. And these people, of course, encounter it and do all this stuff. So it's pretty complex. I was just working with a buddy of mine because I have to figure out the order of the novels on how they're going to get published because it's determined by what's in that novel. And say there's something in that novel that takes place in the 1700s. Well, that's going to set the stage for a future book. So that should be probably published earlier. But there's also some that are just flashbacks. So they don't have to be published early. They could be published later in the canon. So it's an interesting thing. But my brain loves puzzles. So I'm constantly trying to do things like that are so difficult. But it keeps my brain active.
Yeah, I'm a little. People joke that I'm a little OCD. I'm like, I kind of feel like whenever I do anything, like, so the way that I put out my novels, and tell me if you do the same, is like, so I try to make them kind of like Mad Max or Road Warrior. It's like you don't have to read one to get what's going
Mhm.
on with the next one, but like each one tells you a little bit about the other one. So, for
Yep.
instance, I have a debut novel, and like it introduces one character. And then I have a follow-up novel and introduces new characters, but it brings that character in. But you don't have to read the whole backstory to,
Right to know.
enjoy the novel. Yeah.
Well, because the second book is this character's story. The first book was that character's story, but that character appears in the second character's story, and you don't have to know the first character's story to read the second book. That makes complete sense to me. Um, I do have crossovers like that, but they're not sequential. So none of my books are sequential. Like you don't pick up the book and it says book one on it. It may say book one of the mythological universe, but it doesn't mean you have to read them that way. Each story stands alone,
I
but
feel like
they're
when people put numbers and stuff, they kind of disregard it. Like is this episode two, this episode three, and they're like,
yeah,
but so
yeah.
I think it's better when like for instance Mad Max and Road Warrior, it's like they have names. They didn't say like I guess some people called it Mad Max too, but when it was really advertised, it was the Road Warrior. And
Right,
then
it was. And I remember that because I went to the show.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how old, pretty young. Um, I think a lot of the book numbering comes because it's the author who needs that more than the reader.
Okay.
Be- because we try to stay organized in our heads, right? Even with OCD or ADHD, we try to stay somewhat organized. And so when I number my books, I only number them in my universe. I don't number them for the public. And so um, there will be suggestions in one book that say, if you like this novel, you can read more in this other novel. That way, I've got around the numbering system because numbering systems, I don't follow them always. I mean, I like to read an author's books in order if they're like murder mysteries. Say, who Jeffrey Deaver, he writes the Lincoln Rhyme novels. And his do really have to follow a specific order because if you get to book five and you don't know what happened in book two, it kind of leaves you out in the cold and you're like, I have no idea what's going on right now. And a good author will usually bring that back information forward into the current book, but they don't always do that. And so I
I know.
struggle.
I think one of the best ways people do it is like, did you see Fury Road?
Yes.
So at the very beginning of Fury Road, they do like a little bit of a prologue with like what's going on with the Mad Max and Road Warrior, and then they like go full force into the movie. And I figured that prologue kind of like tells you all the info you need.
Well, Star Wars is famous for that, right?
Yeah,
That scrolling screen.
yeah.
That's what that is. That's their prologue. It sets up the whole thing. So yeah, I don't know how I would use something like that in my books. I don't use a lot of prologues. On occasion I do, but not often. Um, Usually the prologues are so abstract that by the time you figure out why you read that, you're almost at the end of the book. So um, it's just, you do what you do. My therapist says you do you, right? I don't
So
want to do anybody else. I just want to do me.
let's let's talk about your series. So what's going on in your series? Or like your like kind of like vaguely connected series or whatever. Like I'm not sure even how tightly connected they are. You tell me.
There. So it's called the Meridian universe. Meridian being either an object, a place, a town, a boundary, a hotel, a a cave. Anything in my universe that has the word meridian in it is connected to all the other books, but not linearly. You
Right.
can go to any of them. So the first one started out being kind of a coming of age story about this kid who who kills his father when he's 7 years old, and his mother, who doesn't want to deal with it, she puts him in the foster system. She doesn't want the kid anymore.
It's
He
a
can
very
go.
Roman Empire, you know.
Right, yeah. And so this kid flees, but he's caught by the state. He's put into the foster system, and every foster home abuses him and the others. So eventually he gets so sick of it, he's like 15, he runs away from the foster system. But that kind of opens up this whole alternate universe where he encounters these spirits, and come to find out these spirits are young men who were killed and dismembered and buried by this man. And come to find out, the main character, Maddie, he finds out that the murderer is his uncle. And so, I mean, that's how the stories progress. They just get like you're going, what the fuck just happened?
It
But
sounds kind of complex, but like not so complex. People are scratching their head going, I
right,
don't fucking
it
understand.
makes
Yeah.
it makes sense in the story. So if you're reading the story, it all makes sense. If I'm trying to tell it to you, you're going to be like, "What are you talking about? Are you psychotic? What's going on with you?" Um, so yeah,
You probably got to get like some of the meat of the story going on before you understand how everything interconnects.
right, and I do that through character. I introduce the character right off the bat, so I want the reader to connect with that character and sympathize or empathize with them. And so when these things start happening, the reader's already connected, and they're like, okay, I'm going to stick with him for this ride and see what happens. And so that's how the story progresses. Um, I definitely don't pander to the reader. I write the stories in my own way, and I hope people can read them, but I understand that not everybody will be able to. So um, it is what it is.
I find whenever anybody panders to an audience that they think exists, they're off the mark. Like all the
Yeah.
stuff that like breaks big is like I didn't see that coming. It's like yeah, because you're if you're trying to match something that's already out there, it's already been done and probably way better.
Well, readers
So
aren't stupid, right?
yeah.
They know if you're copying some kind of formula or something. I do that when I'm reading. I like to read a lot. But if I'm figuring out the story before I'm 50 pages into the book, I don't want anything to do with it.
Do you find I do the thing like since I started, especially since I really started like focusing hardcore on writing, like I read all the time, but now when I read sometimes I'll be like, I would not have said that. I wouldn't phrase it like that. So it's like I need to stop critiquing the book in my head and just focus on how they're spelling out the story.
Well, if the writing starts taking over your head while you're reading, I think that's a problem with the writing, not with you, right? They're telegraphing too much. They're
That's a convenient excuse.
exactly. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm figuring it out, and I understand I'm a writer, so sometimes it's just obvious to me what the author's doing, but I like to read. And I don't want to read a story when I can guess every little thing that's happening before it happens. That's like going to the movies and knowing
Yeah.
exactly how the movie's going to play out. I don't want that. I want to be surprised. I want to be caught off guard. I want to be shocked. I want to be all of these things as a reader. And I want that same way to happen to readers for my writing. So that's how I kind of approach storytelling is I give the readers what I would want in a story.
One thing I kind of noticed is like when I started writing, I was like over describing a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
because I'm an artist, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm trying to paint the picture, like, but then I realized people don't need to know what color like the pants were and the like flooring and all that sort of stuff. And I remember I did this like I think it was like a 6 hour audio Stephen King seminar where he talks about like do what's necessary to draw the picture, but not so much that people get bored. And so when I'll be reading, I'm like, you didn't need to say all that, or like he like Stephen King is very against adverbs, and I see why he is. And I'll be reading, I'll be like, you did not need to have that. Like it's just nitpicking, but it's hard not to do that. But let's go back to you for a minute. So as far as like so they're all what do you call it, like meridian what?
Meridian Universe, that's
Yeah, yeah. So do you do like book one in the Meridian universe, book two in the Meridian universe?
I know which ones are book one and book two, but I don't necessarily tell anybody else. And
Okay,
it's based on the chronological uh, era that that book takes place in. I've got one that takes place in 1700s Europe and America, and it's kind of like uh, the conception story. This is where it all starts, and it's a short story. Um,
okay,
then I have another novel that takes place in slave era North America in Alabama, and it's connected to this universe, but it's sideways. It's not like direct. So you'll catch it if you're reading that story, and then you read the next book, and then you'll go, "Oh, now I got it. This book that I read had taught me about this, and this turns up in this book." And so it's like a relay race. We've got pieces going forward into each new book. And so again, you don't have to read the early books. You can read any of them and they'll work fine. Um, if it requires a an order like book one, book two, book three, I'll consider that when I'm publishing them. But I may not. I don't know. See,
maybe not. Yeah, no, I think great comic writers like Alan Moore and and Frank Miller, like they'll do stuff like that. Like people come in is like they're relevant in the scene, but they're also you could read up on the backstory like, oh man, I didn't realize that. But it's like it's not necessary. It's just like if you're that invested, it helps.
yeah. And it's with any kind of author's body of work, I think. Unless they have a main character that is in every single book, and so you probably have to read them in order. I don't think it's necessary to have books in any specific order. As long as there's nothing in this book that has appeared in this book, so that the reader has to know this book in order to read this book and understand it. I try to avoid that. It's tough,
Okay.
so I want you to come to the book as a fresh pair of eyes, and I don't want you to think while you're reading it, "Oh crap, I should have read book two first." That's distracting to you. I don't want to distract you from what you're reading. It's
Right.
like
You want them to enjoy it. You go, hey, if you like that,
immerse.
check this out.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like albums. I started out as a DJ. So I'm very much into music. And so, but I don't buy music based on a specific band's earlier work. Sometimes, yes, Pink Floyd, absolutely. But other artists, it just doesn't have that same continuity. There's not The Wall and then Dark Side of the Moon, and then, those have some kind of musical continuity, whereas a lot of music does not. So it just depends. I don't want my books to have to be read in an order.
Right.
There are people who respond well to that. Great. Then I'll put something in there where they can say, oh, good, I'm reading book one out of 20 books. And they'll be okay with that. But
Of the universe, yeah.
I don't want that to be the selling point of that book.
So you have, would you say 4 books out right now in
I
that
have four
universe?
four completed.
Right.
Uh, I'm still in the process of working with my business partner, putting together the publishing house. So
Okay.
I'm hoping to get at least one or two of them out this year, and we'll see from there.
What's the name of the poetry house?
Uh, so there's Sepulcher Press, which is that's the one that I built for the new literary horror magazine that we're releasing in June, and that magazine's called Malefic,
Okay.
Malefic, and that's the first publication from this publishing house.
Is it that the name of like one of the evil elves that like in Norwegian legend or something?
Is it?
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
think it is. Which is awesome if it is, but
Well, I
like I'm
like.
Norwegian, so I've read all that
Oh,
stuff.
you and I'm Irish. We have whole different over there. So I like the word because words mean something to me. And the word, the way it's spelled is MAL, which in Spanish that means bad. And then it ends with FIC, which means in my head fiction. So it's like bad fiction. And I like that idea. I want people to kind of look at that and go, oh, that's interesting. And it's obviously going to be a horror anthology magazine. So, yeah, I want them to see it and go, oh, yeah, this makes sense. I want to
Right.
read this. I want to subscribe to it. We'll see. But yeah, I can't say the word sepulcher press. It means, um, you go to graveyards and you see these big kind of mausoleum type.
Oh, I know they are. Yeah, yeah, I know. Um,
That's what it means. So that's why I
so do
want
you
to
have
talk about
stuff
that.
out right now, or do you have stuff
July,
upcoming?
June,
Okay. What
June will be the
that's like
mag.
your breakout, your debut?
Yep, that'll be the magazine, and then either later in June, July will be the first book that's coming out through that press. And then
Okay,
I've got it. Yeah,
I noticed stuff has changed a lot over time. Like it used to be like, okay, just go to like it doesn't even exist anymore, but remember Tower Records? They would like sell
of course.
books. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it used to be like, yeah, just go to Tower and pick it up, or go to Barnes and Nobles or whatever. Like Tower had more of like kind of like the cool weird stuff, but still, it's like, but a lot of those bookstores no longer exist.
right.
So what do you?
Everything's online.
Yeah, yeah. So how are you planning to view it? Would it be like on Amazon? Is there a platform you'd be on?
So, publishing on Amazon Kindle, part of
Right.
that. We'll also do hardcover publishing, so that'll be kind of separate. Um, but as far as marketing goes, I'm doing that already for several authors. So I have mailing lists, I have places where I know I can publish these things. Um, if we get authors interested, they want their books published by us, we'll give them those same traits that we give ourselves. We will help you market, we will help you sell copies, we will help you get word out, we will get you scheduled on podcasts, we will get you doing book signings, whatever works for you.
Oh, that's great. Like I've noticed, like for instance, I've had a number of publishers, and
Mhm.
most of my stuff I self-publish now. Like I started to kind of own press, so I can self-publish my own stuff. But it's like nobody does marketing for you. Like I worked with the Anarchy Books, no marketing. I worked with Free Press, no marketing. I worked like I don't want to throw everybody on the bus, But like there's a bunch of people that they've done nothing.
Yeah. And that's true. And unfortunately, I think that's kind of a drawback to the vanity press thing is that you get the book published in some format, but then it stops. And unless you know what to do next, then you just have this book and nobody sees it. So how do you get that word out? How do you where do you go that you can really get some marketing done? And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. I am. So, that's something that we offer for that reason.
Well, I've heard even some of the indie presses, like for instance, Premiere Press, like they kind of made their name with like a few zombie novels, so
Mhm.
they do heavy marketing on that. But then everyone else who worked with them, they would do nothing for you whatsoever. So it's like
Yeah.
everybody has to do the marketing. So I think at one point people are like, "Wait a minute, why am I giving them like a huge cut and they're not doing anything for me?"
Yeah.
You know?
It should be a pay for play. If I do something for you that gets you book sales, then I will look at that and say, okay, your book sales were this much, and if we have an agreement or a contract, I'll say 3%, and then that's on you to make sure that I get paid for what I did, and that relationship grows over time because we work together well. Um, it's the same thing I'm doing with one of my authors now who's coming out with two new books. It's like, okay, how do we break this down? I'm going to be doing a lot of this work, the publishing, the book design. I design covers. So I've already done the cover design, all of this stuff. Eventually, I need some money. So how am I going to get paid? And so we work that out in advance. And I'm like, okay, yeah, nope, I can live with that. I
Yeah.
used to write grants, like monetary grants for people, and I would take 3% of whatever they were awarded. And that was fair because they did none of the work. I did it all. I got paid for it, and I went away happy. So I, I cannot screw people over. That's just my way. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. That's bad karma.
Well, I've noticed with like a lot of authors and stuff, like I've done book covers, I've done magazine covers, and I've done a lot of interior illustrations. And often the authors themselves will have to come to me. Like occasionally they come to you, well, but often it's the authors, so they have to do everything themselves.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen that before. And that's why when I decided this is what I want to do, I want to have a publishing press and I want to do this for people, but I want to give them something that's worthwhile. I don't want to just throw their book at them and say, here, good, pay me, I'm done. No,
Right.
I want to kind of take interest in how that book sells. And so if it's you, I'm going to work with you to make sure that you and I are going to sell this book
Right.
together. You're not just thrown out there in the cold. I will work with you. And so, so far that's been successful. We'll see how it goes.
Well, I know one thing. Like, I'm with Crossroad Press right now, and they're pretty awesome. Like, they're nice people. I know that one thing that they do, they get a lot of stuff that kind of went out of print, but are like by big names like Clive Barker and stuff. So they'll republish that stuff. So is that something that you had in mind? Like, like people that have already like whatever they're doing currently, they through one press, but they have some stuff that's out of press, but like was like a hit, was well written back in the day.
hmm So I have seen those presses, specialty presses, they're called. Um, I haven't decided yet if that's something I want to do because primarily I built this publishing company to publish my books, but I
Okay.
want to give everybody the benefit of what I have learned. Does that make sense? I don't
Yeah.
have kids. I just have dogs. They don't care. I don't have kids to
Well,
pass on this.
dogs are your kids. I don't care
Yeah,
what people say. Dogs are your kids. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't have that benefit of children to pass my knowledge on to. So I'd rather pass it on to professionals who really want to succeed. That just makes sense to
Well,
me.
I think the thing with Crossroad Press, I don't want to speak for somebody else, but and the guy that runs it, there are two Daves actually, and they're both named Dave, but I think that it's like, yeah, so all that stuff helps us generate income, and then they do like I remember they were at the Scarcity Cares in Virginia. And they bought like a big author booth, and I was there, and the 2 days were there, and they had all their stuff for sale there. But so I think that helps him fund some of their other stuff.
Right. And there are many ways you can do that. If their sole purpose is to make money, they're going to make decisions a bit differently than somebody else who isn't in it to be rich. I don't care if I ever get rich. I don't care.
Well, both of the Daves are authors as well. And,
Okay.
like one of the main guys is like a fairly well-known author. I think his name is David Niall Wilson. But yeah, he has a number of books out, and it's like at some point he just said, "You know what? I'll start a press. I'm, tired of dealing with the publishers."
And that's exactly how I got to where I am right now. I've been sending those completed novels out to agents to see if I could get a book deal anywhere. Are you kidding me? It was like a full-time job submitting these things, and then I would get nothing in return. And so after a year of that, I just said, you know what? Screw it. I can do this myself.
Or you
I
get, I don't know if you got this, but you get people that like they're I guess they're editors, but they're really frustrated writers. So they're like
right.
they get back to you and they're like, well, why don't you make this change? So they want to rewrite it in their voice. It's like,
Yeah.
well, either you like my stuff or you don't. I'm not fucking rewriting it in your voice.
And you don't have that problem if you're doing it yourself,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
know what you like, you know how your process works. So fuck everybody else. It's like, no, you you don't get to tell me what this needs to be. I don't want to be Dean Koontz. I don't want
Yeah.
to be Stephen King. I want to be me. And that's it. So if I can help somebody else who's coming along like you or whoever, that's how I that's how I generate good karma. I help others and that helps me too. So,
Well, I also did two anthologies, and like all the
oh,
authors in there, I put them out, and I edited each one before I sent to them. I tried not to be that like editor who's like, you should phrase it like this. You should say, I'm like, all right, so let's just correct the wording of this a little bit, so it flows a little better. And then I would like, it's called tracking the changes. So I present to them like, hey, this is what I did. You can accept or deny the changes, and
I,
then we go from there.
right. And if an author doesn't want to do that, that's their choice, right?
Yeah.
But I see that process as being like neutering. If I have a book that I'm very proud of and I hand it over to an agent or a publisher and they say, oh no, all of these changes have to be made or we can't publish this. It's like, no, you're not going to cut off the balls from my book and make it into something that you like.
Right.
I
Well, it's just like I would just do like okay, maybe the word should be moved from here to here in the sentence, but it's still you're saying the exact same thing. Like
right.
that's it.
And some authors, some writers don't see why that makes a difference.
Right.
Um, I just happen to be one of those writers that how the wording appears in print makes a difference sometimes.
It does. Yeah.
So you see those memes online. It's like why commas are important. Without commas, let's eat grandma, and with a comma, let's eat grandma. There's just makes sense.
Yeah.
Some of it makes sense.
So all right, I don't want to keep you here all day, but what's your website and how can people get a hold of you?
So marcaspod.com is my website, straightforward. Marcas, P as in puppy, ODEA, different from what's on the screen here because that's the Irish spelling. Marcaspod.com. It takes you right there, and all my contact information, everything's there. So,
Okay.
yeah,
And that's the best way to find everything, like
yep,
all the links to purchase stuff and all that stuff.
yep.
Um, are there any conventions you're going to?
Well, not now because I live bumfuck North Dakota. So there's nothing up here. I mean, nothing happens within 500 miles of this place. So at this point, no, but I do intend to eventually, because these books will be published, and then I will have a reason to go out into the world and sell them.
Right, like maybe buy a table where you can offer everything.
Sure. Or just have everybody over for tea and biscuits. Who cares? You know, we don't know. So yeah, that's it. Straightforward.
All right, thanks, man. Thanks for doing this. Do you have anything else you want to throw out there to the social sphere?
Send money. No, nothing else.
Carrier pigeon, whatever works.
Well, I have Patreon on my website. So when you go out of my website, it says Patreon. Do you want to support me? Go to Patreon, and then you can support me.
What's your Patreon?
Oh darn, I didn't think you were gonna ask that. I have to look it up. Oh shit.
I'll tell you what. Like
It's
after this ends, just email me what you need. I'll put it on this.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And I have a podcast called The Variable, and we explore what I call high strangeness.
What is high strangeness?
Monsters, Bigfoot, that kind of stuff. If you want to think about that, I'd love to have you as a guest on my show, and we can talk more.
No, definitely. And I've been to like Loch Ness and all that stuff, so like I'm into that stuff. But yeah, all right, man. So like I said, thank you very much.
Please like and subscribe before he kills again.